Ladies and gentlemen, today we embark on a journey through time, exploring the legacy of one of the most iconic aircraft in aviation history, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. As of 2025, this legendary warbird is nearing its 90th anniversary, having first taken to the skies on July 28, 1935. For nearly 9 decades, the B-17 has captured the imagination of aviation enthusiasts, war historians, and veterans alike. From the battlefields of World War II to the air shows of today, the Flying Fortress has left an indelible mark on history. But how did this formidable bomber come to be? And why is it still so revered? Let's dive into the story of the B-17 Flying Fortress. The B-17 was born out of necessity. In the early 1930s, the United States Army Air Corps sought a new long-range bomber capable of delivering heavy payloads deep into enemy territory. Boeing, a company already making waves in aviation, responded with the Model 299, a prototype that would become the basis for the Flying Fortress. During its first public flight in 1935, a reporter from the Seattle Times witnessed its impressive array of defensive machine guns and dubbed it the Flying Fortress, a name that would stick. However, disaster struck later that year when the prototype crashed due to pilot error. Many thought the program was doomed, but Boeing's engineers persisted, refining their design. By 1938, the improved B-17B was in production, and a legend was born. When World War II erupted, the B-17 quickly became the backbone of the U.S. Army Air Force's strategic bombing campaign. With its ability to fly high, absorb heavy damage, and still bring its crew home, the Flying Fortress earned a reputation for resilience. Flying in tight formations, B-17 crews took part in daring daylight bombing raids over Nazi-occupied Europe, striking industrial targets, rail yards, and military installations. The aircraft's robust defensive capabilities, including up to 13.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, gave it a fighting chance against German fighters. One of the most famous missions involving the B-17 was the bombing of the Schweinfurt ball-bearing factories in 1943. Although the mission inflicted severe damage to German industry, it also came at a steep cost. Many B-17s were shot down by Luftwaffe fighters. It was a harsh lesson that led to the development of long-range escort fighters like the P-51 Mustang, which would eventually turn the tide of the air war. Over the course of the war, more than 12,700 B-17s were built. These aircraft served in every theater, from Europe to the Pacific, solidifying their place in history. As the war came to an end in 1945, the B-17's role as a frontline bomber began to wane. Newer, faster jet-powered aircraft were taking center stage. However, the Flying Fortress still had work to do. During the early years of the Cold War, B-17s were repurposed for reconnaissance missions, search and rescue operations, and even as drone controllers. Some saw action in the Korean War, and a handful were used for covert missions during the 1950s. By the late 1950s, the last military B-17s were retired, marking the end of an era. But retirement did not mean the end of the story. Today, only a handful of B-17s remain airworthy, yet their presence at air shows and museums worldwide keeps their legacy alive. Organizations and dedicated enthusiasts have spent decades restoring these magnificent machines, ensuring that future generations can witness them in flight. The most famous surviving B-17 is perhaps the Memphis Belle. The first U.S. Army Air Force's bomber to complete 25 missions over Europe. Now fully restored, it sits in the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Ohio, a testament to the courage of those who flew it. Other surviving B-17s continue to fly, thrilling spectators with their deep rumbling engines and unmistakable silhouette. Some even offer rides, allowing passengers to step back in time and experience what it was like to fly in the Fortress. From its first flight in 1935 to its continued presence in aviation today, the B-17 Flying Fortress remains one of the most legendary aircraft in history. It symbolizes not just technological innovation, but also the bravery of the men who flew it in combat. Though nearly a century old, its impact is still felt, its roar still heard, and its story still told. So the next time you see a B-17, whether in a museum or soaring overhead, remember, this isn't just an aircraft. It's a flying monument to history, to sacrifice, and to the unbreakable spirit of those who flew in the skies of war.